Alrighty, welcome back to the big show. She's Sancha Durham. I'm Jamel Hartman. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by the BAC Group of Companies, Medical Halls, Lindos, and People's Pharmacy. Folks, please do not forget, subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. We've got a big celebration coming up April 26th. We'd love for you to all be a part of that. Because of you, we are still doing this 5 years later. Because of you, we've had, as of today, this is our 1100th live episode today.
I need the
That is an accomplishment. I tell you, seriously, 1100 live episodes. When we started, we had no expectations, but I'm telling you all, without this team, people on this team today, whether you see their faces a lot or not, from Sherry to Sancha, Simone to Maya to Larry to Phil to Teo, just everybody, Mia, like, I am grateful. Folks, we don't carry, and I'm mad at them because in our next meeting, I'm gonna tell them, you all need to bring the heat from our group onto the show. Like, don't be easing up the people. But this group gets along so well, even when we don't. Teray, I love a little debate with Teray. Don't let her fool you, folks. But it's awesome. Because of them, because of the support of people like Rashida, who was a day one on the show. She was a guest way back when we first started. During the pandemic, because of the BAC group and Medical Halls and Lindos and People's Pharmacy and the people who came before, whether it's NMAC, there's mailboxes, it's Friesenbrook. This show exists because of you. So I am grateful. 1100 episodes. It's tough waking up some mornings. It's tough doing it. To the ones with children, Sancha and Maya, Mia, Sancha and Mia and Larry and Phil and Teo, like, it's a sacrifice. They have to ask for permission from their families to do this. I'm serious, but I'm not. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot. So I thank them. I thank you all. And let's celebrate this on April 26, 2025 at Aleph Wade International Airport. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Without further ado, let's bring in our guest for the day. She was one of the first. Thank you, Kenton. We appreciate you, Kenton Trott. We really do. And Kathy Rogers and Jewel Eve and Nicole Walker family right there. And Mark, I think these are emojis. He says, indeed, this is great. I think those are emojis. And Suzanne Ingham, we appreciate it. Emily Gill. Yes, thank you all. Thank you all. Because of you, we are here. Let's give a warm TDH welcome. This, to me, is another important conversation because if you know me, I am not one to really celebrate or highlight Black History Month because a lot of what we do on this show is subliminal in terms of it's in our conversations every day or daily play or daily inspiration. It's there. I believe that it should be in us first. It should go beyond the shortest month of the year. And two, it should be in a majority Black country, something that is part of our everyday life. All right. There's no reason that I or us should just be finding out about the Honorable Jean Atherton, right? Things like that. I want to give a shout out to my cousin, Miss Dang, over there at Power 95, Bermuda's favorite morning host. We had, a really nice conversation. Well, she kept me for lunch like 4 or 5 hours yesterday, right? Taking up all my time, right? She talks so much, you all. Not me, but we talked about stuff like that. We talked about what we can do to ensure that you have information. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you all for giving us the chance. Let's bring in Rashida Godwin because I will keep you here like I kept Miss Dang tomorrow. Yesterday, sorry. Welcome.
Good morning, guys. Morning, Sancha. Morning, Jamel.
First off, we need to see the Hill shirt. We need to see the Hill shirt real quick.
Never
forget your roots, man. Can we get one of those? You selling those?
No, I just I'm different places. Sometimes I even ask different companies if they can make the shirt for me, so I should probably sell them. But normally I'll see a quote and I'm like, oh, I like that quote. I'm like, let me contact somebody and they just make the shirt for me, like even Mary Prince shirts. But some of this, like Didi Mary Prince, they just give me a shirt anyway. Okay. So so if
I like that. I'm gonna have to get some of that merchandise, man, tight and start selling it. But Rashida, thank you for coming. Thank you. For being a part of this. Before we get into today's conversation, I took a little note to make sure I asked you something. We got to talk about this DEI thing, because I think, in my personal opinion, I think that Donald Trump's doing us a favor. That's my audience. You may disagree, but I think that Donald Trump may be doing us a favor. But honestly, if you'd like to share any thought, like, do you have any thoughts on DEI and people who are being impacted by whatever rollbacks or forced things that Donald Trump's putting out there?
It gets back to what you said too, Mal. You know, a lot of those things historically really benefited, mainly they didn't benefit white women. You know, even we got International Women's Day coming up, and that was mainly just for white women. It really was. And when they needed numbers, they pulled in the black women. But again, the history is right there, and history is there for us to learn the lessons from. Just the mere fact that you got to be somewhere and someone's got to be reminded and written down on how to treat you. Do you really want to be in a space and place like that? You know, it's like I didn't agree with it either. I just, people should be, but of course sometimes you do have these people who don't do the right thing. But do we really want to be around people like that? Do we really want to work in their spaces and places where people's got to be constantly told how to treat us? You know, we have to question ourselves.
Yeah, I think you said it so much more eloquently than we could have. But yeah, you heard it, folks. You heard it. And again, audience, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I say this all the time. I just want us to think a bit more deeply on the issue. 3 people on this screen right now are entrepreneurs. I don't think any of us are entrepreneurs because of DEI, and I'll leave it at that. Let's jump into today's conversation. Tomorrow marks the end of February. And February in the United States is Black History Month. And in Bermuda, we adopt a lot of what the US does. One day we'll stop doing that, their Independence Day, and we don't have one, and then Thanksgiving. But why is it so important for us to recognize Black history beyond February in Bermuda?
Absolutely. It's very important because it's history, right? We really shouldn't even be saying Black history, but unfortunately, that's the time when people begin to acknowledge, oh, yeah, again, it's something written down. Yeah, let's remember this Black history. But it's history, you know, it's the Black people's records of the past. We have to remember it because there's a lot of lessons. Like I said, history is not something that happened in the past. And we're living history, we're living it every day. The lessons are there for us to learn from. Even going back to your question at the beginning of the show about government and could they control the prices and could they, you know, assist with the cost of living? All the history is there. We have the history. I just finished a tour and I had it was popular with corporates. A few other people did it. It was called the Friendly Societies Tour. Great tour. It shows Black people, how they banded together in many aspects, how they already had systems of self-determination, were business owners. Many of them didn't even rely on the government for anything. You know, many of them didn't even rely on banks for anything. They created their own system. They rallied together, and even they were even able to, because they had systems of self-determination and were entrepreneurs. They were able to help the less vulnerable in the community without even worrying about the government assistance. Because back then, even in these early centuries here in Bermuda, and not even that long ago, this was up until like the 1970s. You know, we had these organizations. They schooled our children. They sent them to universities. They pulled their monies together. They had like I said, in gift clubs, just a whole lot of things. And they didn't rely on the government because the government itself at that time was a group of wealthy white men who they called the oligarchy. And they didn't put nothing in place. They did not worry about how Black people would make it in Bermuda or even the less vulnerable would make it. They were pretty much worrying about just filling their own pockets.
And that brings me to my next question, Rashida, because,
Right.
you know, I said earlier that would probably piss a lot of people off, that I think getting rid of financial assistance is a way to, you know, reduce the cost of living and overall improve the economy. And I think a lot of people are very short-sighted because they're not even going to go beyond to see what I mean by that and how what you just explained, how we did for self before, how we were more, you know, successful economically before.
Mm-hmm.
So what role do you believe the community plays in ensuring that Black history goes beyond 1 month and that it is just history and our stories?
The community, they just really have to, decide on. I don't know. It's tough for people now because people a lot of times think the history is boring. They're not interested in it. So the stories are not shared, and then there's a gap. And then you had the older generation who's just not interested in sharing it to younger generation. I took out a school group. I took out Cedar Bridge and we had a great time. I tried to make it as fun as possible. I even used some of your trivia in it. And it's just learning the lessons of the past, because that's what it's about, learning the lessons. Nothing is new under the sun. All the questions we have, people have already asked these questions. And not only that, people have already created successful lives and successful businesses. For me, charity, even going to the lessons, charity is not sustainable. Charity is not sustainable. We cannot be keeping on, and it goes back to even giving up people a fish. You can't be keep giving them. They got to learn how to fish for themselves. Of course, we're still gonna have those folks who still wanting a handout. We just have those people, But like you said, I think you're right, and when you say that we have to allow people to be more self-reliant. But the thing is, like I said earlier, within our history, when we're talking about pre-emancipation, post-emancipation, August 1st, 1834 onwards, and even just before that, Black people were self-reliant. They did not rely on the government for anything. They knew that. They knew that things were not in place. So they knew that they had to band together in order to make it. That's how they even built their houses. Did you know that the banks, even Bank of Butterfield, had to go beg some of the Black people to get a loan from the bank? And this is what you learn in the friendly society to us, because people even rally together to build their houses. They may have even gone to the bank for the last building of the house and stuff like that. But from there, our people, the people that we descend from, they were self-reliant people. They were not beggars. And they even wrote it even in the historical books. I am not a beggar. I'm not begging anybody for money. So why are we thinking that the government should fund everything for us? It didn't work like that. And then you create a sense of entitlement. We need to stop it. Charity is not sustainable. The people that we stand from were self-reliant, self-determined people. They found a way out of no way. So we have to hone in back on our history. We have to learn from it, and we have to bring that to where we are today. And we have to learn these records of the past from the people that we descend from.
You know what, though, real quick, Sancha, before you jump in, is these are uncomfortable truths right now. Uncomfortable truths. And they're not harsh. It's not harsh, but I just, and this may offend some folks, but I think political ideologies have been blurred, whereas if you support a certain political party, then you must agree with everything they do. And that means, the idea of charity, you all know how I feel about charity. I've never been, I believe in empowerment, not charity. I've said that from the beginning. I don't believe in, I think people have created images around charity that benefits them, whether it's corporations. We have a strict policy on this show. If you watch this show, if you notice one thing, that when we do have charities that come on this show, they don't mention their sponsors. So I'm a believer in empowerment. I absolutely agree. And I think that, and again, this is not, I want to make something clear, because this is what the narrative has been in the United States, right? With the canceling of books, bans, and all that stuff. It's like, oh, this stuff is hateful. It's anti-white and this and that. No, it's not. It's pro. It's real education. It's sharing the stories. It's making sure that people have access to the stories, because our history, our stories were not told by us. They were not told by us. Sorry, Sancha. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamel. What does Titan do to ensure Black history is celebrated and shared all year round, with that said?
Yeah, like I said, one of our main Black History tour, Sancha, is really the Friendly Societies tour. And that's a tour that we definitely share. We do it on requests for people. Some people like to do it for their birthdays and different things like that. When we even talk about enslavement and even Mary Prince, I have to share with people that when we're talking about enslavement, enslavement is not Black history. Enslavement is literally white history, because that's the white people's records of the past. That's something that they did to Black people, and also whites benefited from, the compensation from Britain and different things like that. So they were the wealth builders, and they built wealth during that history. But it's important to share this history though, because again, enslavement was a traumatic ordeal that happened to Black people, but that brings us to where we are today. The thing with enslavement, though, it directly relates to our psychology that we have today. It really does, especially here on this island. We do suffer from a mental enslavement, and we have to literally, like Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey said, right here on this island as well too, we have to emancipate ourselves from mental enslavement. That's what we're dealing with right now, because only ourselves can free our minds. And again, when it comes to the history, we have to stop thinking of it as something in the past. It's directly related to our behaviors today, our actions. We behave still in many actions and forms, and even many institutions that we continue to go to, we still behave as enslaved people. Even when we talk about what we eat, the food we eat, we still eat the food of the enslaved people that they were forced to eat on Sundays, which was the codfish. Again, many people are not aware of that. But, because we don't look into our past to learn the lessons of it, that's what it's about. It's about learning those lessons and figuring out how those lessons could teach us and how we could move better towards our future and create and imagine a better future together. That's what it's about. It's really about learning it.
So, sorry, Sancha, I've got to do it again. So you're telling that 2 weeks ago, when I became the most hated Bermudian for saying that we gotta be honest, codfish and potatoes is disgusting. When they came for me. They came for me, right? And I apologized. You're telling me that codfish and potatoes goes back to basically enslavement and a scrappy, disgusting meal that we actually started to claim?
Absolutely. It's really sad. It's a few stories I could get into that. Yeah, basically, wherever the short story of it, make a long story short, wherever there was enslavement, there was codfish. And what happened was, what those European enslavers would do is they would go to Canada, Newfoundland, up in Canada, and they were given the codfish. Not sure what they would actually do with it, but then they decided, hey, we could give this food to enslaved people to feed them instead of paying all this money to feed them and different things like that. Many of the enslaved people, they were not even allowed to they said even here in Bermuda, many of the enslaved people was in Cyril Otterbridge Packwood's book. He said many of the enslaved people, it was stories of them. They wanted to have their own chickens, that they got the chickens taken away from them. They wanted to have their own gardens with potatoes and that got taken away from them. And it was like, you eat this codfish. And they were given 1 pound of codfish every Sunday. And then even after that, they were made to go to church. They were forced to go to church as well, too. So those were the 2 things they had to do on Sunday. They had to eat the codfish and they were made to go to church. And then there's another story that another historian writes, is that she was actually working, I can't remember her name, but her son is a politician, Jamal Simmons, I think his name is, Jamal Simmons. His mom actually wrote a story and she shared it as well, too. And she said that when she was working at the Pack with him in Somerset, or one of his nursing homes, she decided to have, oh yeah, it's a holiday, let's just give the residences some codfish. But I'm sure, I don't think it's Packwood or somewhere, but it was a residence, it was a nursing home that had a lot of white people there. A lot of white people at this nursing home. And to her surprise, the white residents would not eat it. Here in Bermuda, they took offense to it. They was like, I'm not eating this food. Basically, I'm saying that it's dog food. How dare you give me this food? They were insulted by it. Wow. True story. Not realizing that, they were told, that's something the Black people eat, not us. We don't eat that.
Wow.
And this is a story, yeah, a true story. You could ask Jamal, said his mama wrote the
Yeah,
story.
I think she's
Miss
named
Cecil,
Miss
Miss
Simmons.
Snape, yeah, Miss
Miss
Snape. Miss Snape has a story. Yeah, she has a fantastic story about it. And I even said, I was like, well, Miss, like people should know this story. She was like, yeah. She was like, they would not eat at the white residences at the nursing home. We're like, we are not eating this food. And they were offended by it and insulted by it.
And all jokes aside, I think
Yeah.
you think it's Jamal Hartman shit. So I'm just probably like, well, like, can I, do my thing? But real quickly, I want to say, Renee Simmons said, no wonder I can't stand codfish. Then Charles said, comment for codfish is good. Codfish, sorry, is going too far. But I didn't even, I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't know the history as a child of codfish, of why I didn't like it. I liked fried fish. That's what I liked. But I appreciate you sharing this, because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And if we told these stories over and over and over, Sancha, like if we discuss this stuff over and over and over, the more we'll understand it. This week, two things have happened. We've had some amazing conversations with people, from Danielle Peng yesterday, to Kelly Medeiros the prior day, to Madam Gina and Atherton on Monday. But when I see comments like this, woo, good information. Michelle White, Rashida, don't say this, just find out why we eat codfish and potatoes on Sundays. I'm blown. When I see comments like that, 1,100 episodes down makes me feel like we wake up and do this for a reason. It makes me feel like this is the greatest reward, when information is shared, and now we have that information and we can live accordingly based on the information we have. That's why we exist. You all can laugh. I'm not here for your entertainment. You can laugh at my waves all you want, but I think that the important conversations that we're having, me and cousin Miss Dang were talking yesterday, and it's like, there's no place where you can just go and find all this information. And then I said, well, there is one. If you're looking for information for a research paper or any of that stuff in another few years, you'll be able to go and research our YouTube channel or wherever all the Daily Hour episodes are, and you'll be able to find information and cite it as the Daily Hour, because of people like Rashida who come on here and engage all of you. We appreciate it, Sancha. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't happen again. All right.
I just want to say one thing, correlating back to what we just talked about. I know a lot of us, we don't think about it, but how Black people struggle with high blood pressure and diabetes, and it's directly linked genetically to the fact that we were forced to eat these things. So certain medications, they don't work for us as Black people because our makeup started to change, right? So before we're eating high in salt, and then we're wondering, hi, I've heard it so many times. I eat healthy, I eat well, but yet I still have high cholesterol, or I'm struggling with all of these things. And it's because genetically it changed our genetic makeup. Just wanted to throw that in there.
You just made me feel a bit down.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm high cholesterol, folks. Go ahead. Sorry, enough of me.
And you work hard at it, right?
Yeah,
but so now it's really not you. It's from our past. But I feel like you've answered this already, but I feel like you can probably go a little further into it. But why is it so important for us to tell our own stories?
Absolutely. It's very important for us to tell our own story. And I could tell you from my experience, even just taking out the young people the other day. And it was so funny because a lot of them were saying, you remind me of my mama. And they were calling people and taking pictures of me and just excited to be there. And I was just like, said to myself, images literally are everything, because they felt so comfortable and different things like that. And we have to tell our own story. The Jews tell that story. Many white historians tell their own story. Many folks tell their own story. We have to tell our own. Nobody's going to tell our stories for us. And that's especially here, even on this island, and even pretty much Black people, most times, we're always waiting on someone to tell our story or waiting on someone to save us. No one's coming to save us, We have to save ourselves. And if we want things to be better and to do better, we have to start with ourselves. We have to gain self-awareness. We have to reflect on self, and we have to say, what are we doing? Stop looking outside of ourselves for heroes of the. You could be the hero within your community. You could just do little things, even what Mal's doing with the daily hour, and you're her too, Sancha. This is pretty heroic stuff you guys are doing, and it's gonna get on in this is history as well too. You live in history. So we have to tell our own stories. No one's going to tell our stories for us, or those things about us, and I believe that's our duty and responsibility to tell our stories of our people and ourselves.
Indeed. Just go through a few comments. And if you have any questions for Rashida, send them through audience. Grandma Autobridge said, thank you, Rashida. She's Levette Pemberton says schools need this. You've got Michelle White. She says, I usually only make codfish on New Year's Eve. Could you put the story in writing so that we can reflect every
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, and that's another thing where I was going to ask, what are some resources? Because again, people keep asking, well, where do you get your information from and talking on the show and so on? Like, share with people some resources. Like, should they come on your tours? Do you share the information on your website? Do you sell anything with Bermuda history where they can utilize it and use it as books as a reference? Like, what would you advise what would you advise they use as the resources? Sorry.
I'm working on a website. It's called Sankofa Bermuda. That's SANKOFA Bermuda, all spelled out. And we're trying to put as much history as we can on there. I am getting a lot of requests. People are requesting all sorts, and some people see me and just say, "Where's the book?" I'm ready to buy the book. So I am going to be working, hopefully, within a book later on in a few years. But a lot of people are like, I would like to have your name on my bookshelf. And I just laugh, but I say yes. And so a lot of things got pulled out of me per se, but that's my main website. It's called Sankofa Bermuda on there. We do have a few YouTubes on there. I will be going forward even this year. I'm doing emancipation talks because I did a talk for the Bermuda National Trust. And even with that talk, it was subscribed. And even talking to trust and different people, I said, I'm really when emancipation comes about, it needs to be a much more even knowledge base to it. We had the game, the cricket, and that's great. But the knowledge needs to also be there too, and it needs to be a mainstay. So going forward, I'll be definitely doing emancipation talks. Of course, I do the Mary Prince tour that'll be coming up. Actually, in March, I'm going to be doing a tour with the Bermuda National Museum. That one's called the Anti-Slavery Tour, and that's based on the United Nations International Day of Remembrance of the people who were enslaved people within the African diaspora. So that's a tour I do with the museum every year in March, and just sharing that history. But otherwise than that, if they want to do it, lots of times people want to do it just with their families. They could contact me. I could take out a group on request. I could do a customized tour, or just, do one of the African diaspora tours or something like that. Yeah.
All right. Real quickly, audience, let me be very clear. Rashida was not telling you not to eat codfish and potatoes, by the way. She was just
no.
Right. I want to make that clear because I think sharing the information and knowing it. But cousin Nicole Walker says, I knew the story, however, I'm not being forced to eat it and actually enjoy it. Do you eat it with butter sauce or tomato sauce, cousin Nicole? We've got Marquita Lee says, going to use that info for my family games night on Saturday, codfish. And then Nicole Walker says, if you haven't been on the Mary Prince or Friendly Society's tours with Titan, you are missing out. So much invaluable info is shared. We need to get back because we haven't been on one in like 2 years, Sancha. So we're going to be taking some of you all with us very soon. But Rhonda Johnson, this is something. She says, unfortunately, when we talk about the injustice of the past, many people get labeled as creating racist. And many of our Black foreparents, I love how she said foreparents, not forefathers, but foreparents within their wisdom thought it would be easier on their children if they just didn't know the past. However, the psychological trauma is still there. Let's talk about that because it was a couple years ago I shared on this show. We were talking at my family. It was a Christmas gathering the week before Christmas. And my younger cousins, they're all in their early 20s, hadn't heard of the Technical Institute when we were in a conversation about how it produced so many. And I actually was upset with my uncles and my aunts and older family because I'm like, how is it you never had these conversations with them? And I felt like we're so focused on them going off to college and being educated by others that we fail to do our job at home, right?
Absolutely. That's a great question for, and what you're talking about as well. And what she put up there, that's a great question. Yes, the people do sometimes get labeled as race, but by definition, Black people could never be racist. By definition, racism and race to be racist itself, you need to have money, lots of money to be a racist. You need to be labeled as somebody who's wealthy. Racism, a racist person is a group that comes together that's based on group economics. That's where one group is able to subjugate another group in such a way. Essentially, that's what, by definition, that is what Bermuda is. In Bermuda, Black people do not control the economic wealth of the island. Whites control the economic wealth of the island when we're talking about the economy, the grocery stores, different things like that. And they could band together and they're able to price gorge or different things like that, set prices at a certain place. Black people are not able to do that. So by definition, Black people are not able to be racist because they don't have the money to be a racist. To be a racist, you have to be a very wealthy person. And then secondly, we do so much an injustice when we decide not to share our past stories and history with our children. And I say that because it's important for them to know where they came from. If you're standing looking forward and that's all that you know is from where you are looking forward, then you think everything's great, right? But sometimes you gotta, when they get to situations, they're going to find themselves in situations. Because I know this happens all the time. A lot of people contact me, share stories, and our young people find themselves in institutions where they become very frustrated. They don't understand why these things are happening to them. They know something's happening, but they can't put a finger on it. And that's because we haven't shared with them the stories of what happened to folks in the past. And how they got to where they are, and how they need to forge ahead forward. Like I said, you have to share the story of enslavement. The children laugh when I say this, and I say, guys, we didn't come over here on a Carnival fun ship on an all-you-can-eat buffet. As much as people want to believe that, that's not true. Our people had to fight constantly.
Yeah.
Not that they wanted to, they had to.
But we've got to go. But we've got some important stuff that I want to touch on to add to what you said, and maybe putting you on the spot. And just to answer a question, Renee Stevens says, "Has there been a tour?" I think I missed that one. TDH tour. Yeah, we did one 2 years ago. We'll be doing more this year. So we'll be welcoming the audience again to rock with us with Titan on another tour this year. But I'm very clear, and I really do not care who I offend by saying this. But you touched on it earlier. I said to all the women who were on this team last year, March, I don't really like International Women's Day. White women and Black women are not equal. And I feel like this feminism movement has killed the Black movement. I feel like people mention intersectionality. That has not benefited Black people like DI and affirmative action. Maybe that was what they were set out to do, or designed to do, or told you they would do. But speak to us about that. Speak how these other movements, without naming them because people get offended, right? They're sensitive, right? We're supposed to be tough and bold, Black man, Black woman. But how have these other groups, and also liberal and conservative movements, it's easy to call a Black person who's a conservative a coon, but a Black person who's a liberal, a progressive, which is ridiculous to me. I see no difference, right? Speak to us about how this impacts our progress.
Yeah, it impacts it a lot. I think a lot of us also have to question those of us who get offended or not understanding it. We have to question ourselves. Okay, well, why am I getting offended by this? Of course, with Black people, you find, and many psychologists talk about this as well too. Black people have, because of our oppression, they believe it's from the trauma of oppression. This is one of the reasons why many of us grab onto inclusivity. That's the word. We want to be inclusive in everything. But that inclusivity, even like going back into the history, we learned these stories right here, even in Bermuda, of, at emancipation, there was freedom, still came with much restrictions for those newly freed Black people at that time. But there was never going to be any equality or equity. Never. People continued on into segregation. Segregation automatically went into place. Blacks could go in certain places, whites only, different things like that, certain institutions. Again, you still had the blacks, the friendly societies, the blacks who had their businesses, different things like that. But we still had the blacks who really wanted to be inclusive, and they wanted to go in the theaters, to sit into the theaters. Then we had the end of the segregation. But did you know that at the time when there was the theater boycotts here in Bermuda, that Black people had their own movie theaters run at Manchester Lodge and at different lodges? We had what was so interesting about that is that the white people used to go around even to the lodge theaters. They used to even rent out the lodge theaters to show their own movies. So why were we worrying about, that's what happens. This is the conversation I get into with the children. So why were we even worrying about sitting in the seat in the white people's theaters? Because again, inclusivity, it's almost like a mental illness. That's what I liken it to, really. But when you define mental illness, but these are things in history that happened right here in Bermuda, and we should be dissecting these stories to figure out what made us want to go sit in the whites theater when we had our own theaters.
And I think that was the difference between Malcolm X and Dr. King. But I guess is it goes back to the conversation earlier about doing for self, like the whole Marcus Garvey movement and the like. How did we get here? But how do we fix where we're at? Like, how do we come out of this? I don't, when I tell people I don't subscribe to conservatism, they say, oh, so you're liberal. I don't subscribe to liberalism, so you're conservative. Why do I have to have any of those ideologies that don't align with me? Why have we, and especially with younger people, it's like, it's almost popular to support these things, and it's almost like unpopular to be pro-Black. And pro-Black is not liberal or conservative. It's not. And pro-Black is not hating other groups of people. It's empowering. It's educating. It's giving. It's working to ensure that your community benefits from you. Other groups do it well. We know what the economics are like, how dollars rotate in a community. But how do we get there? I mean, why is it us? We always have to be included. Like I tell people all the time, do not compare our battle with conscription with other things. Because we were not fighting to be included. We were fighting to be excluded. I think we really need to take a deep look. A deep look. Joyanne Reed just let go from MSNBC, right, as a news talk show host. I don't know why we're all crying about it. She's got enough leverage to go do her own thing. No. I just don't understand it, because we have within us the intellectual capacity to do for ourselves. Why can't we do it?
We can, but we don't want to learn the stories of the past as application in order to be able to move forward, and then we put it in practicum. We don't want to learn it. Like I said, even in the US, you had Tulsa, Oklahoma. You had that what they call the Black Wall Street. There's Black people over there too. They were not concerned with white people and what white people were doing. They did business with them, yes, to a degree. And the same here in Bermuda. We had the organization called the Friendly Societies, the same type of organization. At the time, what's so fascinating and what I find so interesting about even the Friendly Societies, right, is like I had this wealthy white man. He had stopped me. I was in a meeting and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe. And he owns an architectural firm in Bermuda. And he says, I just think the stories, my grandparents used to talk about the Friendly Societies in the early 1900s. I just think the story is so fascinating. This is a white wealthy man saying to me, the story itself was so unbelievable. How can a group of Blacks come together during a time of deep segregation on an island and still be able to build wealth? How does that happen? And that's what happened when we talk about the stories of the Friendly Societies. Unfortunately, it's not much of them around now. People still can be a part of it, but the story itself, we can learn so much from it. Again, it's about how groups of people decided to rally together, even though now that's difficult for many of us because many of us do like to be in our silos, but we don't understand that in order for us to even have Black progress, we had to come together, because even what happened to us, which was oppression, continued oppression, and many people say even in many ways we Black whites didn't even have to do it anymore. Black people, we continue to perpetuate the oppression of ourselves to ourselves. We do it on our own.
Yeah.
But again, it's learning the stories of that type of history and saying, okay, yeah, we could do these things and forge ahead together. But we want to be siloed in our thinking, unfortunately, and siloed in the way we move forward, and thinking that we can move forward by ourselves. But we can't move forward by ourselves. We can't.
Yeah.
We have to do it as a group effort. It has to be group think, group community moving forward. Because even the friendly societies, just sharing with you quickly, eventually evolved into the unions.
Right.
And then the unions were supposed to forge ahead even further. We had the co-op supermarket. They had the bank over there. Those were the things that they were supposed to leverage to make into more economic banking for people. When we're talking about the credit union was supposed to evolve into a much more bigger bank. It wasn't supposed to just stay a credit union. Our supermarket was supposed to turn into supermarkets all throughout the island. And that's how we were supposed to expand on it. But it's something there as well, too. I spoke to Ms. Fabric about it at the union, because it was a period where I did used to take the children to the union as well, too, was that, we dropped the ball, but it doesn't mean that we can't pick it up and continue it on. It's going to take some time, but we have to share these stories.
Yeah, and Mayola John said here, she said, the need, I just want to piggyback on what you said, the need to be included seems to have been the downfall of Black entrepreneurs who were providing the same products and services, because it became cool to go over there to the other store once you were allowed to do them. And, I think this is one of our challenges, Levette Pemberton saying, Blacks did not support them. So, folks, I mean, this has been an awesome conversation. Obviously, Rashida will be back often to do this. But Rashida, just remind people how they can find out what Titan has going on, how they can do themselves stay engaged and involved in learning the various stories and history beyond February.
Yeah, beyond February, you guys could contact me. You could send an email to hello@titanexbda.com. That's hello@titanexbda.com. We do all sorts of tours. Even now we have a cultural tour coming up called the Fish Sandwich Tour. That's a great tour. You could purchase the tickets there on PTix. And as well, like I said, I'm also going to be doing a enslavement tour with the National Museum that's coming up in March, and that's going to be on PTix as well too. That's just getting through the enslavement history for the United Nations Day of Remembrance. But otherwise than that, you could feel free to contact us anytime, and we could be there for transportation as well as tours.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, Rashida, for making time for this. And I want the audience to do us a favor. If you really feel this was an important conversation, an excellent conversation, an awesome conversation, make sure everyone you know has access to it. So like it, love it, follow it, share it. Like this should be, we love to share gossip. It's like Desmond Crockett said it. Like when it comes to murders and movie, we love to talk. No, we love to gossip, but we don't love to talk. Like we love to share like long voice notes from people and gossip, but these are the kind of conversations we need to be sharing on WhatsApp, folks. Honestly, this is the information that needs to be told. Too many times in recent conversations, we didn't know things, and that's okay because we don't know what we don't know. But you now have access to this information. Don't hold on to it yourself, because that does not benefit the greater community. Rashida, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, Rashida Godwin, folks, please reach out. She's got the Fish Sandwich tour coming up. She's got the thing at the National Museum of Bermuda. Reach out. We're going to take a final break, come back, and we've got a Black History Bermuda question in 2 minutes, 32 seconds. Sancha, you ready?
I thought it was a geography question.
Yeah, to name that place. It's a name that place, Black History. Yeah.
Okay.